Getting back to Dushara, the Nabatean sun god, it says later in Edom they also adopted the Edomite god Dushara, lord of the mountains. The historian Strabo mentions that the Nabateans worshipped the sun and set up altars to it in their homes. He added that they made daily libations on these altars and used incense. The archaeologist Philip Hammond comments that the god of the people was Dushares, Lord Du of the Shara mountains. The exact nature of this deity, whether it was a mountain or a solar object like the sun, is still not entirely clear. In terms of the original concepts held about him, as a contrast, the Sabines of southern Arabia worshipped the sun cradled in the crescent of the moon. So here it says the Arab Trinity. Some scholars feel that the ancient Nabatean pantheon may have become Al-Qam, the male god of the night or the moon, Dushara, the god of the day, sun, and the goddess Al-Uzza, stars. Al-Uzza and Alat had very similar baetels and were probably two names for the same goddess. Inscriptions bearing their name are not found in the same area. In one area, the goddess is known as Al-Uzza, and the other area, Alat. Eventually, Alat may have taken supremacy as the name of the goddess. In this case, the Trinity would have been expressed as Al-Qam, Dushara, and Alat. So Dushara, Nabatean star god. Dushara, also known as Dushares, was a pre-Islamic Arabian god worshipped by the Nabateans, particularly in Petra and Madain Saleh. He was considered the son of the goddess Al-Lat and was associated with celestial assemblies. With other deities, Dushara was revered as a divine arbiter who brought justice when called upon correctly. His worship continued into the Roman period and possibly into the Islamic period, with evidence found in various Nabatean inscriptions and a shrine discovered in the ancient harbour of Puteoli in Italy. The cult of Dushara was significant in the Nabatean religion, reflecting the region's rich tapestry of animistic and anthropomorphic elements. So we go to Acts 7 and it says, "This Moses whom they refused, saying, Who made thee a ruler and a judge? The same did God send to be a ruler and deliverer by the hand of the angel which appeared to him in the bush. He brought them out. After that he showed wonders and signs in the land of Egypt and in the Red Sea and in the wilderness 40 years. This is that Moses which said unto the children of Israel, A prophet shall the Lord your God raise up unto you of your brethren, like unto me, him shall ye hear. This is he that was in the church in the wilderness with the angel which spake to him in the Mount Sinai, and with our fathers who received the lively oracles to give unto us, to whom our fathers would not obey, but thrust him from them, and in their hearts turned back again into Egypt, saying unto Aaron, Make us gods to go before us. For as for this Moses, which brought us out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what is become of him. And they made a calf in those days, and offered sacrifice unto the idol, and rejoiced in the works of their own hands. Then God turned and gave them up to worship the host of heaven. As it is written in the book of the prophets, O ye house of Israel, have ye offered to me slain beasts and sacrifices by the space of 40 years in the wilderness? Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch and the star of your god Remphan, figures which ye made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. So they were worshipping this star of Remphan, which represents the solar deities, and that God gave them up to worship the hosts of heaven. And here we have the Arab Trinity, which is the god of night, the moon, the god of the day, the sun, and the goddess Al-Uzza, the stars. So they're worshipping the host of heaven. The New International Version, it says, "You have taken up the tabernacle of Moloch and the star your god Raphan, the idols you made to worship. Therefore I will send you into exile beyond Babylon." That's where the word Exilarch comes from, the exiled in Babylon. The Star of David is often associated with the number 666 due to its geometric properties. It has 6 points, forms 6 outer triangles, and contains a 6-sided hexagon in the middle, which some interpret as a connection to the mark of the beast. Additionally, some sources suggest that the Star of David symbolizes Satan, so the cube in the center, further linking it to the number 666. However, it is important to note that the Star of David is a primary symbol of Judaism and has historical significance beyond these interpretations. While it doesn't have any historical significance until after AD, the Jewish community of Prague was the first to use the Star of David as its official symbol, and from the 17th century on, the 6-pointed star became the official seal of many Jewish communities and a general sign of Judaism throughout, though it has no biblical or Talmudic authority. If we look at these Herodian coins, we'll see here in the top of the temple depicted here a 6-pointed star, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here we have an artist's interpretation of the coin of Herod the Great, and we'll see the 6-pointed star at the top of what I believe here is a temple. I've personally come to the conclusion that the number of this man, or this man actually is the king of the Exilarchs, or the exiled Kabbalistic Talmudic Pharisees of Persia and Babylon, the Farsi, and Muhammad's right-hand man was an Exilarch by the name of Farsi. And I think that these 3 spirits, like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, the beast of the sea, and the false prophet lamb beast of Islam, is their false doctrine and their demonic words, which is basically Talmudic lies, Kabbalistic, Babylonian mystery religion. And getting back to the Sol Invictus, here we have one of the symbols of Nabatean zodiac portray Alat. She was the female goddess of fertility, and she was the mother of the sun god. So this sun god worship by this Herodian ancestor, the emperor of Rome, Elagabalus. He was a descendant of Nabatean ancestry and Edomite ancestry, and I believe related to these priest kings of Emesa, who were probably related to the Pharisees and the Exilarch priestly line from Babylon, who brought us the books of the Babylonian and Jerusalem Talmud. So in this paper by A.J. Dias, many quibblers, the quibbler in the Quran, Abu Lahab, and the birth of Islam, says this paper sets out to investigate the relevant passage in Surah 2 of the Quran and to ask whether there might be a reason as to why orientations of mosques changed inside a city's walls or with additions to mosques. The discoveries in the paper demonstrate that the orientations of mosques provide ample archaeological evidence for the evolution of Islam. They have fundamental consequences for the approach to history of the beginning of Islam, the Quran, and beyond. Some of the discoveries are as follows. The Quran speaks of 2 Qibla changes. The Quran neither commands a change from Jerusalem nor to Mecca, but instead to Al-Haram in present-day Israel, as confirmed with orientations from various mosques. Babylonian Pharisee quibblers show a consistent prayer orientation to the location of the Exilarch, not the temple in Jerusalem. So it wasn't the temple they were facing the Exilarch of the Babylonian Jews. The pattern of directing places of worship towards the Exilarch continues through all 3 mosques of Medina and beyond. For the first time, the Ethiopian kernel of the early Muslim story can be confirmed with archaeology. There may indeed have been 2 Muslim stations in that country, with surprising accuracy with the conversion points from multiple directions. The Quba Mosque in Medina is precisely orientated towards Aksum. The Mosque of the Prophet is precisely orientated towards the Imam Mizged in Negash. Levite Sadducee Qiblas show a consistent prayer orientation to the location of the Nasi, which means the prince, also not to the Temple Mount, which means the prince, the Exilarch. There are many Qibla changes that can be attributed to Muslim structures. The pattern follows the dynastic Paraclete leadership, from which follows that each town can reveal its individual story about dynastic expansions and contractions through the archaeology of the mosques. Similar to changes in dynastic territories, the stories told through mosques in multiple towns are interlinked and overlap. Since none of the early structures point to Mecca, the Muslims have arrived there much later than is assumed in the traditional accounts. Even after the first appearance in the historical records, the practice of orientating places of worship towards the dynastic leadership would persist for centuries. Jacob of Edessa comment that the Jews were praying towards Jerusalem implies that the Exilarch or the Nasi was occupying the Temple Mount at that time. The Al-Asghari shrine, the mosque in Samarra, was built by Seleucids over 1.5 centuries after the disappearance of the Mahdi, and it would be expanded by Ismailis thereafter. Abu Lahab in Surah 111 is identified as the Babylonian Exilarch Abu Lahlu'a. Now I'm not going to read this, it's on SSRN papers, it's by AJ Diaz. Can download the paper. Surah Too Many Qiblas. Islam was invented to worship Exilarchs. I said that in my last video on the Exilarchs, and there's some interesting information in this paper regarding this.
Okay, good evening everyone. This is Mel here from Sneakers Corner. Today we have Sam, who's going to be talking to us about another possible origin of the Muhammad myths. But before we introduce Sam, I just want you to have a look at this slide here that I have produced and shown on a previous video. It was a mind map of the origin of the Muhammad myths, and there are lots of different people that are inspirations for the Muhammad myths. So, for example, in Ibn Ishaq's Sirah, Abu Muslim was a contemporary person who he would have borrowed some of the ideas from. Another contender would be Nehemiah bin Huziel, who essentially is the first caliph. He's the Jewish caliph when the Persians and the Jews conquered Jerusalem in 614. And then, of course, Iyas ibn Qabisa al-Tay would be the founder personage who is the inspiration for Muhammad as well. And then there's Babay the Great, or Mahmuda, who had some part in terms of the overall picture. But another person that we mentioned was Elagabalus, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, from the 3rd century. And this is where Sam comes in. Sam is going to talk to us about his research into this possible origin for the story Muhammad. And before we kind of go into that, just so we're clear, we know that there are really early contemporary references to someone who went by the name of Muhammad as in terms of a title. 2 sources which are from the 640s, or perhaps a little bit earlier than 640s, and they seem to refer to a guy who was around in 34. In other words, 2 years after Muhammad was supposed to have died. But distinct from him, who's a historical person, who we know almost nothing about, there is the later biography which Ibn Ishaq wrote in the 760s, and then it was developed later by Ibn Hisham. And on top of that, we have the various hadiths that were gathered in the 8th century and then into the 9th and 10th centuries. That's what we have in terms of the story of Muhammad today. But at some point, there was a disconnect from the historical person, and a story was constructed. And the reason we know the story is constructed is we can see lots of key elements of borrowing. So, for example, in Ibn Ishaq's Sirah, we can see elements from the various Gospels. We can see motifs from the Old Testament, like, for example, the story of Moses. But today we're going to be looking at another source for those ideas. And so I'm going to unshare here now and come back to Sam. Sam.
Right. Well, for people who have never looked at the Arab Roman emperors, there were actually 5 Roman emperors who were from the region of Syria. They were Arabs, and surely everyone in the region of Syria knows all about them. It would be common knowledge.
Yeah.
But I became aware of this as I studied Elagabalus. I was intrigued with this fellow who was so obviously an Arab, and so obviously his name, which was not his real name was Antoninus. He was called Emperor Antoninus, but he was mocked following his death because he brought the cult of Elagabalus to Rome and tried to introduce it to the Romans unsuccessfully.
Okay, so I just want to stop here and add this little bit of information that after the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD, the Sanhedrin was moved to Syria. And it says here, the Sanhedrin, a Jewish legislative and judicial assembly, moved to Syria after the destruction of the Second Temple and the Bar Kokhba revolt. The Great Sanhedrin, which was Supreme Court, took appeals from cases decided by lesser courts. It was sometimes called the Galilean Patriarchate or Patriarchate of Palestina, governing Galilean Jewry. The last universally binding decision of the Great Sanhedrin appeared in 358 when the Hebrew calendar was established. The Great Sanhedrin was finally disbanded in 425. So it just shows that the Sanhedrin, the scribes, the Pharisees, Pharisees meaning from Persia, were relocated from Judea to Syria in that time after the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD.
They rebelled.
So the reason why he's called Emperor Elagabalus is because that's the name of the cult that he promoted.
That's the god that he was promoting in Rome.
Yeah.
So I came up, as I read his biography, I came up with a list of about 23 different things, which are surprising parallels between Elagabalus and Mohammed. The most important similarity for me is the geography.
Yeah.
Both of them are from Shams.
Yeah.
Now, the word Shams is probably not available to known to most people, but it's the word that Arabs use when they refer to the region of Syria between Turkey and the Gulf of Aqaba.
Yeah.
That whole region is called Shams, and in the mind of an Arab, that is one region. And it also includes, interestingly enough, it includes Petra.
Yeah.
Petra is part of Shams. It's southern Shams.
Yeah.
So they're both from the same region. And I'm not saying that everything in the biography of Elagabalus is true, because much of it is is propaganda, which was written following his death in order to denigrate his name and his legacy.
Yeah.
However, they were both from the same region, and they have many similarities coming from the geography of the region. So let's go on.
Yeah, so what's interesting, just before you go on, is the fact that this might help us to understand why Muhammad seems to have such a negative biography. If the biography is merely a reflection of Elagabalus's mocking biography, then that sort of makes sense. That could explain it.
Yes, it certainly does, because Elagabalus was a Roman emperor. And whoever wrote the biography of Muhammad, in my view, is trying to culturally appropriate elements from the biography of this Roman emperor.
Yeah.
So that, and whatever he did is all right, because he's an emperor, you see. He can do anything he wants.
Yeah, yeah.
And moreover, because he can do anything he wants, he's being given the approval of the gods, especially the solar deity. Now, people have noticed the name Mohammed, and they wondered, what does it mean? Why is it? Well, I think it's a title coming from the Roman Empire. The Romans called their Caesar August,
yeah,
or Augustus,
yeah.
And the word August comes from augury, which is the flight of birds, which is interpreted by the priests of ancient Rome. And what it really means is that the person who has good augury is blessed and approved by the gods, you see?
Yeah.
And Muhammad, what does that mean? It means praised. And who is praising him? Well, the God is praising him. Allah is praising Muhammad.
Yeah.
Allah says prayers for Muhammad. Allah sends, and the angels send their prayers upon Muhammad. Mm-hmm. They are approving of him. So Muhammad is actually a title which harkens back to Augustus, and in Greek it was called Sabaeus, I think. And so these titles were well known in the region, and they just came naturally to the people.
Yeah. Okay, so now, let's have a look at your bullet points here. So you have a story of an acculturated native who rebels.
There are several examples in ancient history of acculturated natives who rebel. They grow up under another empire.
Yeah.
And then they rebel against it as they become an adult. Now, a good example is Moses.
Yeah.
Who was acculturated as an Egyptian aristocrat.
Yeah.
And then he rebelled.
Right, okay.
And Moses is one of the most important stories in the Quran.
It is, yeah.
And so we see this parallel in Muhammad's life as well. He was raised as a Roman citizen.
Yeah.
And then he rebelled. Now, Elagabalus was also raised as a Roman citizen and rebelled.
Yeah. Now, people probably, the Muslims who are watching would say, well, Muhammad wasn't raised as a Roman because they imagine he's way down in the Hijaz. But if we accept that the historical person lived up in Shams, well, then he was an acculturated native.
Indeed. If he was in Shams, he was part of the Roman Empire.
Okay.
Both men were from pedigreed Arab families.
Yeah.
And both men had a questionable paternity.
Yeah.
It's not really certain who their fathers of either men were.
Yeah.
Both men had deities which were associated with mountains.
Yeah.
And with the sun.
Wow.
Muhammad was dedicated at the a temple of Dushara, in front of the statue of Dushara, by his grandfather.
Yeah.
And Dushara, or Kos, is a solar deity.
Yeah.
The family names of both men are associated with the sun.
Wow. Yeah.
And the same sun symbols are found in Emesa, which is where Elagabalus came from, and in Petra.
Wow. That's interesting.
Both men had families who were hereditary leaders in religion.
Yeah.
Both men were circumcised.
Yeah.
Both men tried to impose Arab religion on the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Both men experienced sex scandals that caused their followers to question their authority.
Yeah.
Both men were known for the love of perfume, gluttony, and sexuality.
Right.
Both men showed a disregard for their people's religious traditions. All of the gods, now this is not necessarily something Mohammed did, but all of the gods and the relics of the gods were brought together in one place in both stories.
Wow. Yeah. Like the Kaaba and the 360 idols. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Very good.
And
yeah.
why would they do this in Mecca? They wouldn't. There's no reason to bring all the gods together, and it would take somebody of great importance to do so.
Yeah.
Who did it? We don't know who did it. And so I think this is an element of the story which is borrowed straight from the story of Elagabalus.
Yeah.
All of the gods were brought together at one place, which is what he did in Rome. He built a special temple for Elagabalus, and he brought the relics of different religions there.
Oh, okay.
So both men insisted that Jews and Christians should join their cult.
Yeah.
Elagabalus married 4 women. He actually married 4 times. Muhammad allowed his followers to marry 4 times.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting parallel in the
It is
number.
indeed, yeah.
Elagabalus had many women and men sexually,
Yeah.
relationships with them. Muhammad as well. Both men married young virgins.
Yeah.
Both men had gay relationships and bestowed favors on their favorites.
Yeah.
Both men had their critics murdered, which is not unusual for an emperor.
Yeah, it's true.
Both men adopted a son, but had no biological son.
Yeah. That's a lot of
Both
similarities.
men were known to wear, yes?
Yeah.
Both men were known to wear women's clothing. Both men alienated and offended their followers by their immoral behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Elagabalus was a descendant of the Ptolemy Macedonian dynasty. And he had depictions of himself on his coins showing that relationship. The Quran brings the most amazing and perhaps surprising story about Alexander the Great into the Quran. They call him Dul Karnaim. Why is he there? Well, clearly this is another case of cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
They want to give an imperial, so they bring in Alexander the Great.
And it's because you're suggesting that the reason why they're focusing on Alexander the Great is because of this location in Shams. That Alexander the Great would have been perceived as important culturally to them. Is this the reason, or do you think it's because Elagabalus is linked to Alexander the Great?
It was very important in the ancient world. It was very important to have a link to Alexander the Great, but I'll get into that later.
Yeah.
Elagabalus was succeeded in Shams by a queen called Zenobia. She became the empress of a large empire stretching from Turkey to Egypt. Now this is an Arab empire which is a predecessor of the empire of Abdul Malik, centered in Damascus.
Yeah.
Palmyra is not far from Damascus.
No.
And I think everyone at the time would have known about this.
Yeah.
Muhammad married a woman called Zainab, and his first daughter was called Zainab. It's very similar to Zenobia, and there are other similarities.
And actually, I suppose another parallel is Queen Mavia and Muawiyah later. There seems to be a connection there.
There are a number of family names which are similar and keep coming up.
Absolutely.
And they're common. They are certainly possible references to preceding Arab notable people.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Yep.
Patricia Crona was one of the greatest scholars on the historicity of Islam. And if your viewers would like to see a wonderful lecture, it's listed at the top, a video.
Yeah. I will share that link under the video so people can click on it. Yeah.
And she points out Muhammad was raised as a Roman but rebelled. Moses was raised as a prince of Egypt but rebelled. He's mentioned 135 times in the Quran. Many scholars think that Moses was assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
Muhammad was also assassinated, by the way. Arminius was another native of Germany. He became a Roman general. He received Roman citizenship and equestrian rank, which made him a knight. He later rebelled against Rome. He defeated and annihilated the Roman army, and he was assassinated by his own people in 21 AD.
Yeah.
Mahatma Gandhi rebelled after becoming a citizen of the British Empire and moving to South Africa, where he worked as a lawyer. But he rebelled after he was thrown out of a first-class apartment.
Yeah, so it's quite a common thing.
And then he was assassinated as well after he achieved his goal.
Yeah.
Just as Muhammad was in the story.
Yeah.
Elagabalus was another acculturated Roman citizen who became emperor. He was descended from Roman emperors according to the myth of his mother and grandmother.
Yeah.
And then he rebelled. And then the Romans turned on him and they assassinated him and his mother as well.
Yeah.
In all cases, these leaders were murdered by their followers.
Yeah.
Now, this map is very, very important because you can see exactly in the red on the left side where Shams is located. In Europe, they call Shams the Levant.
Yeah.
That's where it is. And you can see quite clearly that down here at the south end, the Gulf of Aqaba, we have Petra.
Yeah.
This is also called Northern Arabia. So both Elagabalus and the Muhammad figure that we're thinking of are from Shams. They're from the same region exactly.
Yeah.
And there's Edom at the bottom on the right, which is where Petra is located.
Yeah. Now, Petra, I should point out, is a hypothesis that Dan Gibson has proposed as the location of the Muhammad figure.
Of the original holy city of Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
So both men are associated with solar deities. At the left, we see a mural, I guess you call it a bas relief, and it has the threefold deity of Syria, consisting of the one in the middle, who is Baal Shamin, the Lord of Heaven,
mm-hmm.
the lunar god, and the solar god on the right. The solar god is the chief deity of Shams. He is considered the greatest because Shams means the sun. Now, the name Elagabalus, we're not really sure where it comes from, but it could be Ilagabal, which is the god of the mountain, or I think it could be from Aramaic. It could be Elohabal.
Yeah.
And with a strong H sound, ha, which they couldn't pronounce in Latin.
Yeah.
So they transcribed it as a G, but it could be Elohabel. Elagabal is how it's written in Latin, in the Latin script. So all of these are, Baal means simply Lord. So there's the Lord of the moon, the Lord of the heaven, and the Lord of the sun.
So the key thing is, the key thing there is Elagabalus would be the god of the sun, or the sun god.
Well, Elohabel, which is Aramaic, and they, by the way, they spoke both languages in northern Syria. Most people would know both languages. I think they would be able to speak Arabic and a little bit of Aramaic as well, or they would speak some Aramaic, or they would speak Aramaic as their mother tongue and some Arabic as well. But everyone up in the north would have known both languages, as well as Koine Greek.
I haven't got an answer there. I'll ask it again. So just to confirm, so we're not confused here, are you saying that, okay, you have the word Eloha Baal, the god Baal, is that the equivalent of a sun god, Ilagabal? Well, are you saying it's something different?
Well, I'm going to get to the proof a little bit later of that, but right now we're just introducing the names.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that top line. I'm sorry to be awkward now, but that top line would suggest that what you mean is that Elagabal is the sun god of Syria. Is that right, or am I misreading it?
Elagabal is the sun god of the city of Emesa, which is where Elagabalus comes from, and that's a very specific. You see, in the ancient world, gods and goddesses were specific to a region. Yeah. And even to a city.
Yeah.
So we're going to get to this. In general, the sun god is the chief god of all of Shams.
Yeah.
The sun cult is extremely important in Shams, and it took on a specific meaning for people who were in the city of Emesa, and which is modern day Homs of northern Syria.
Yeah.
So how does Muhammad relate to the solar deity? Well, here it is. Yeah. If you look on the left, you can see the bas relief from Palmyra. And on the right, you see a seal, an Edomite seal, from a small place just north of Petra. And this seal is identified with the god Kos. Now, a number of scholars, Gluck Browning and Dan Gibson, and also Robert Venning of the Universität Münster, also believe, as well as Dr. Healy, John Healy of the University of Manchester, they all believe that Dushara and Kos are the same god, and they also believe that it is a solar deity.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just read what there is below, what I've put in below. This deity became the local supreme god, and as such, the Lord of Heaven, who was higher than the sun god and moon god, or could have solar and lunar features himself.
Yeah.
The other deities must not follow a pantheon with hierarchical structures, but they were associated deities. Following his status as supreme deity, Dushara could later be identified with Zeus, the supreme god of the Romans, and following his status as Lord of Heaven with Helios, the sun god of the Greeks. You see?
Yeah.
The solar features of Dushara are so obvious that some scholars interpreted him as the sun god. See Healy. While his lunar features seem not to be stressed in the Nabatean or the Edomite area, the Nabatean deity with a lunar nature was more likely Alat, according to Robert Venning of the University of Münster. Let us take note here that the infant Mohammed was dedicated to Hubal, which is another name for Kos and another name for Dushara.
Mm-hmm.
It was dedicated to the statue of the sun god in Petra.
So I suppose the key thing to draw from this is we can see that both figures, Elagabalus and Muhammad, are connected to a sun god.
Yes, they are. They're deeply connected. They have a deep, deep connection, both of them. Now, I've amplified the seal found in southern Jordan, just so you can see it a little bit better here.
Yeah.
On the left, you see very clearly the sun symbol and the moon symbol. Now, what does this look like in terms of Islam?
Well, the crescent moon and star.
Now, we're told that it's a star.
Yeah.
But we see here very clearly, this is not a star. This is the big star in our solar system. This is the sun.
Yeah.
So the star, we have been misled all along that the Islamic star and crescent are a star, but it's not. It's the solar god Shams.
Yeah. I would say, just to avoid anachronism, the use of the crescent moon and star is a relatively late thing in Islam. I think it was the Ottomans that introduced that, so it's not really something we can trace too far back.
I want to show you the evidence, and maybe you'll change your mind.
All right. Okay.
All right. Both Elagabalus and Muhammad were from prominent Arab families from the region of Shams. Both of them had the name Shams in their surname, in their family clan name. Now, you won't recognize this when you see Samsagarami or Samsagaramus, but they couldn't pronounce the sound SH in Latin. So when they transcribed it, they transcribed it as an S, but it would originally be pronounced Shamsi Karim.
All right. Okay.
The noble people of the sun.
Yes.
The noble or august There's that word august, and
Yeah.
august simply means lucky, or given luck by the gods. They were the gods smile upon them,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so the noble son family, they became over the years they grew into Roman client potentates, local potentates who were tribal leaders. And they eventually became a dynasty of priest kings. They were the head of the sun cult. Emperor Antonius Pius, who lived from 138 to, or reigned from 138 to, no, he lived from 138 to 161, was a predecessor of Elagabalus.
Yeah.
The grandmother of Elagabalus was Iulia Domna, and she was also a Sampsigaramus. She is considered to be the matriarch of the Severan dynasty from the Roman Severus family.
Yeah.
Her sister Julia was the grandmother of Emperor Elagabalus, who lived, who was emperor from those dates in about 4 years.
Yeah.
Now let's turn to Muhammad. His clan name is Hashim. Now, what does that sound like?
It sounds like Sham. Hasham.
To me, there are a number of interpretations, but to me, I think it comes from Asham. Now, when you pronounce al, which is the word the in Arabic, next to another consonant, it turns from L into the, it's called compensatory lengthening.
Yeah.
So you just repeat the sound of sh, shams.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we have Hashim or Hashem. And it's very possible that this name comes from the sun. This family was a sun worshiper.
Actually,
who worshipped Dushara.
Just to add to that, I stand corrected, but I believe in that part of the world, in some forms of Arabic, they used ha instead of al as well. So that would support the idea that it means al shams.
When I studied Hebrew at university, they taught us that the original definite article for the Proto-Arabic and Hebrew, the original article was hal, hal.
Yeah.
And the Arabs dropped the H because they were like the Cockneys.
Yeah.
And the Hebrews preserved it, the H, and they dropped the L.
Yeah.
But they had the compensatory lengthening where there's a sort of a lengthening of the next word. So when you say the king in Hebrew, you say Hamelech with two M's because you're compensating for the loss of the L. So that the two definite articles are related. So we go on. Mohammed was perhaps Assyrian, is frequently referred to in the Hadiths as the white man. They talk about the whiteness of his arms, the whiteness of his armpits, the whiteness of his belly. He was distinctly whiter than the other Arabs. So does this point to his genetic origin in northern Syria? It could do. It could. One of the companions of Muhammad said, anyone who said the prophet was black is killed. It's very important for them that he was white for some reason. Perhaps because that was associated with royalty and with imperial royalty.
Yeah. I think the fact that Hashem connects so neatly with Syria strengthens the case as well for that location.
It's another piece of the puzzle. It's another parallel which we have to take into account. And the thing is, on its own, it's one thing. But when you have 24 or 36 of these similarities, then you start to say, I think we have an intentional plagiarism
Yeah.
going on. That somebody is copying the life of Elagabalus and attributing it to the hero of the Arabs.
And to make it less obvious, mixing in other sources and influences so that there's a good mixture there, so that it's hard to spot. But obviously, you have spotted these similarities. So,
well, it started to just come to me one by one, and then I said, I think I'd better make a concentrated study of this and see how many there actually are.
yeah.
So here's another one.
Mm-hmm.
Both men had deities who were associated with mountains. Now, if you look at the top left, you can see the volcanic plug, which is located in the city of Emesa or Homs in northern Syria. Now, the local people call that the citadel.
Yeah.
But the city is on a plain, so it's one of the largest rises of land that can be seen for a long way away. And this is where the temple of the sun god was located, and where the royal family lived, at the top of this impressive mountain. But it's possible that the sun god of Shams was located in another place, and I'm just throwing this out. It could have been Mount Hermon, which is the largest, the tallest mountain in the region. It's over 7,000 feet, over 2,000 meters in elevation. It's a very, very high mountain, and it's the northernmost part of Israel, and it's located between Lebanon, Israel, and Syria.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was a key battle fought between the Romans and the Arabs in this valley as well. But I can't remember what the name of the battle was, unfortunately. But
there was a significant battle there. Oh, there were a lot of battles all over the region.
Yeah.
Now, and it's really majestic. From this picture, which is taken from the Golan Heights, there's a pillbox in the foreground.
Yeah.
On the right, we see that Dushara was associated with the Mount Seir, which is just north of Petra.
Mm-hmm.
The land of Ad, or the land of Edom, is mentioned in the Quran, and Dushara and Mount Seir are in the Hadiths quite frequently. So Dushara, Du is actually from Aramaic, by the way. I better go back. Dushara, Du means it's a particle, which means of the or from or which or it's just a connecting word, or like that.
Yeah.
That we use in English. It's a connecting word.
Yeah.
Dushara means the one, and it's actually Du al Shara, the one from the Shara, Dul Shara. But but with the loss of the L, it goes Dul Shara, Dush Shara. So by compensatory lengthening. So the one from Shara is the god who lives at Shara, which is also known as Kos, and also known as Hubal. So
just to be clear, you're saying that the same sun god is the god of the mountain as well. Is that right?
That's what the scholars are saying.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I didn't say it. Professor John F. Healy of the University of Manchester believes it.
Yeah.
Robert Venning of the University of Munster believes it. And Dan Gibson has made a great study of this, and he believes it. And there's a video that you can look at, in which Dan Gibson talks about the sun god being Dushara. Now, Hubal, and notice that word Baal there.
Yeah.
Hubal was the main god of the Quraysh according to the Sirah in Ibn Hisham 37, Tabari volume 5, page 271.
Wow, isn't that interesting now? Yeah.
There is no historical association to tie Hubal to southern Arabia. It's only found in northern Arabia.
So when they were writing this mythology, essentially, they seem to have northern Syria in mind, and yet somehow it got projected down south into southern Arabia. It seems a strange way of going about things. Maybe.
Well, to us it seems strange.
Yeah.
But to the people of Shams, this is one region. This is one country for them, in their minds, and even today.
Yeah.
Arabs still think of everything between Turkey and the Gulf of Aqaba. They still think of that as Shams.
Yeah.
They think of Jordan as southern Syria.
Yeah. But
they don't think of it as an independent area.
Yeah. But if we go a bit further than Aqaba, like the Mecca and the Mecca of the Hijaz is a good bit further down. So
it is.
So they're still projecting it down where there was none of these traditions.
And this is something that we don't understand yet.
Yeah.
Why they moved the capital from Petra to Mecca? We don't know that.
Yeah. Could it be?
We can't figure it out.
I think there's obviously a gap there from the 630s up to the 760s, and in that 130 years, there's a lost tradition. I've suggested on earlier videos.
It's an intentional cover-up.
Yeah, well, there's intentional cover-up, but also that there probably was a northern narrative. I think I call it the NHS, the Northern Historical Story, originally, and then it had to be a bit like a tent. It had to be taken down, moved south, and put back up again in the south for whatever reason.
That's exactly what they did.
Yeah,
and I'll leave it to Dan Gibson to go into these details. But so we go on.
Yeah.
The writer Al-Aziraki says the Hubal statue was brought from a town of Hit in Syria by Amr ibn Kuhay, a predecessor of Muhammad, in Petra, which they call Mecca in the Hadiths and Sirah. So he brought this statue of Hubal, which is the sun god of Syria. Hisham ibn al-Kalbi in the Book of Idols says the statue came from El-Balka near Damascus. Now, just every time Damascus is mentioned, a little bell should go off in your head, because that's where Abdul Malik had his capital city in Damascus.
Yeah.
And it's the center of Shams.
Yeah.
It's right in the middle of Shams. The statue of Hubal was made of red agate or carnelian with a golden hand which replaced the original hand of stone which had broken off. So here are some similarities between Baal Shamin of northern Syria and Dushara or Hubal of southern Syria. They're both male supreme deities.
Yeah.
They're rulers of the heavens. They are solar deities. and they are associated with royalty, with the royal family. Hubal is associated with the royal family of Edom, what the Quran and the Hadiths call Ad.
Yeah.
Professor John Healy considers Dushara, Baal-Shamin, Hubal, and Kos to be the same god. Bishop Epiphanius writes that the festival of Dusaris, which is the Latin or Greek way of saying Dushara, was celebrated at Petra. See that word, Petra?
Yeah.
On the 25th of December, which is the winter solstice. That's the day of the unconquered sun, the day when the sun starts to come back, you see?
Yeah.
And this is the same as the Roman god Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. So there's a definite connection in the deity which the two men worship. Now, both men worshipped this deity in the form of a rock, a black one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is very, very important. We see here on the left a coin with a chariot pulling the black rock, which Elagabalus had brought. And at the bottom, you can see Elagabal at the bottom of the coin.
Can you, I can't see
at
where.
At the bottom of the coin on the left, there are the letters ELAGABAL.
Oh, yes, sorry, yes, yeah.
It's a very old coin, so it's hard to read.
Yeah, I didn't know if you meant a figure of a person or whether it was letters. Okay, so
no, it's the letters written in Latin letters.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And in the middle, you can see the rock itself in a chariot, and it was carried around the streets of Rome, led by the emperor himself, who was the priest of this cult. He introduced this ceremony. I suppose this must have been a ceremony that they did in Emesa, in Syria. And he introduced this to the Romans, and they were repulsed by it, because they didn't want anyone to mess with their god Zeus.
Yeah.
Now, here we see on the right, we see a picture of Mohammed moving the black stone, just as in the way that Elagabalus did. He moved his black stone, and Mohammed was chosen. He was considered the only person worthy enough to move the black stone to the new Kaaba. He set this in the corner of the Kaaba. Oops, get back here. Because he was the only one who had the worthiness to do so.
Do you know what I find interesting is in the picture on the right, you have four of his followers holding up the black stone, in the cloth, and it reminds me of the four horses of the chariot there.
Well, the story involved here is not what you're suggesting. It's actually that they represent the tribes, which were stakeholders in the Kaaba,
right? And
the tribes couldn't decide who was worthy to move the black stone, so they chose Mohammed. They all took turns. They took a part in it. So members of the different tribes carried a cloth in which the black stone was carried, and Mohammed had the honor of placing it.
Yeah. What I'm suggesting is that perhaps the original account here, if we take the imagery of that coin with the four horses being used to carry it around, that when it went into the myth maker machine, as it were, and it got spat out on the other side, turned now into a myth, then this might account for the four tribal leaders, but that's how myths start. They have a core idea, and then it gets transformed in an allegorical sense into something else. But just a suggestion,
Very, very possible. Well, we'll go on.
Yeah.
Where did the black stone come from? I think I have a good guess. Many people say that the black stone was a meteorite. But what we find in Syria is one of the largest concentrations of black stone in the world, and it's so black. There's so much of it. It's actually called black basalt, which is congealed lava.
Yeah.
And there's so much of this in Syria that there's an area which is called the Black Desert, and you can see it from outer space.
Yeah, that's a huge
from
area.
A satellite, and you can see that the satellite shot of the Black Desert is very black.
Yeah.
And this is one of the great sources of cut black stone for architecture and other purposes in the world. Syria is famous amongst people who are builders for this black stone, and they built entire cities using this black stone in ancient Syria. They paved the streets with black stone. Their houses were built of black stone. Mm-hmm. Their temples were built of black stone.
So can I suggest that
yes.
that this black stone then would be symbolic of the people there, because it was such a significant part of...
It was a part of their life.
Yeah.
It's a part of their life. So it's very possible that the black stone was brought from Syria, just like the black stone of Emesa. And it could have been the black stone of Petra was actually, or Mecca, was copied. It was another copy of the sun cult of Emesa.
Yeah. So you're suggesting that it was a copy and not simply the same stone being used in both cases. It's just a copy.
I don't know if anyone would allow them to chop off a piece of the sacred rock.
Yeah.
I don't think they would. Maybe they were just copying them.
Yeah. Well, according to
a man brought the statue of Dushara from Syria. Well, why could they not bring a black stone from Syria? It's very likely that they did.
Yeah. According to John of Damascus, he speaks in the 730s and says that the black stone had carvings on it, and he connected it with what is the name of the god? Well,
he said that the god Alat or Al-Uzza. He said you could see traces of the facial features of the goddess.
Yeah,
on the black stone.
I'm trying to think. There's another goddess that's kind of in the same territory. It's not Venus, but the equivalent. Aphrodite. Aphrodite is the one I was
Aphrodite.
Yeah.
Well, Aphrodite is the same as Alat.
Yeah.
Both men, not Mohammed, but the Quran itself, tries to culturally appropriate Alexander the Great. Elagabalus was believed that he was descended from the Macedonian Ptolemy family, which is the rulers of Egypt. He thought that he was a descendant of Cleopatra VII, who married Mark Antony.
Yeah.
And had a child with him. All of the other members of the Sampsigaramus family were also members or descended from Cleopatra through intermarriage between royalty. So they were all thinking, we have a right to rule. We are descendants of Alexander, the greatest emperor in history, and therefore we have a right to rule in Shams.
Yeah.
So the Quran takes the aura, the prestige of Alexander. I couldn't figure out why Alexander got into the Quran. I thought of this for years. I said, why is Alexander in the Quran? And now I think I know. Yeah. Because they want his prestige.
Yeah.
They want to ascribe his prestige to the dynasty, the Umayyad dynasty in Damascus, which is the center of the sun cult. And at the bottom, we see a picture of the sun god with the Macedonian sun around it, giving its power, authority, and prestige to the Macedonian dynasty.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah. That's interesting.
Now, the Quran says, we established Dul Qarnayn and gave him a way. Now, this is very important. The way of Allah. He followed a way. Mm-hmm. The way of Allah. Before there was the word Islam, there was the word way of Allah, and it was one word, Sabilallah. And
this
means
actually
the path of Allah. And that's what they called their religion. It was the path of Allah.
This mirrors what happened in the early days of Christianity. They were referred to as people of the way.
People of the way, exactly.
Yeah.
Another parallel.
Yeah.
And the Sirah, which is the official biography of Muhammad, created under the Abbasids in the middle of the 8th century.
Yeah.
Mentions Dul Qarnayn and says that he was of Egyptian and Greek origins. Well, the Ptolemy dynasty, the Ptolemy dynasty was in Alexandria, Egypt, and they came from Macedonia, north of Greece, and they spoke the Greek language, and they spread the Greek language throughout the ancient world.
Yeah.
So
I would say, in fact, not north of Greece, but it was northern Greece back in those days. Would it not?
The northern Greece ends at the border of Thessaly and Macedonia.
Oh, okay.
And all of the ancient writers say so.
Yeah.
Thessaly is the border. That is the northernmost part. Yeah. And they considered the ancient Macedonians to be barbarians. They spoke a different language. We don't have any idea what that language was because it wasn't written. They didn't want anyone to know what they were saying among themselves.
Yeah.
So at any rate, here is the further evidence of the symbolism that I was speaking of.
Yeah.
There we see on the left Alexander depicted in a statue as the sun god in the 2nd century, and you will see on his head both the rays of the sun, and you'll also see his horns. Now, the horns of Alexander, if most people don't realize this, but he was depicted on coins with horns because he claimed to be the offspring of the creator god. It's a little bit complicated, but I'll just go into it anyway. But when he was in Egypt, he told people that he was the descendant of the god Ammon, which is a deity with horns on its head. It's a ram deity.
Yeah.
And so it has ram's horns on its head. And he was often depicted on coins and in statuary with horns. And we see on the right another picture of Alexander with the sun and moon symbols, just looking so much like the Islamic symbol.
Yeah. And
they're actually appropriating Alexander with this symbol.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing.
It simultaneously depicts the solar and lunar symbols, but also suggests the horns of Alexander as well, so it works very well.
They are appropriating his prestige.
Yeah.
to the new dynasty of the Umayyads in Damascus.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. And this symbol, the crescent and the sun symbol, it's not the star symbol, it's a sun.
Yeah.
This is on most of the Umayyad coins. It's starting with Muawiyah. This sun symbol shows up on the coins of Muawiyah, the father of Abdul Malik.
Yeah.
There is a connection to the Empress Zenobia of Palmyra. Now, I'm just going to show you the map, if it's here. This is a mighty big empire.
Yeah.
The Palmyran Empire, which is centered up here where I'm pointing with the cursor here. This is the center of the empire, the capital city.
Yeah.
Now, Zenobia, whom we see on the left here, lived from between these years, and her empire lasted from 267 to 273. That's 400 years before Muhammad.
Yeah.
She claimed that some of the coins of Zenobia have horns on her head as well.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's amazing. So it's
because they're claiming descent from Alexander.
Excellent. Well, that's brilliant, because that kind of helps us form a bridge from the time of the 7th century back to the time of Alexander. So that makes more logical sense. There's not such a big long gap if there's a tradition, at least, even if it's only one between Alexander and the 7th century.
In the East, in the Near East, they have long memories.
Yeah, yeah.
And for them, Zenobia is just yesterday.
Yeah.
She happened yesterday. The chief scholar of Palmyra was a man called Khalid al-Assad, and he named one of his daughters Zenobia after this empress, because for them this is living history. This is living history, just like many Macedonians today name their children, their sons, Alexander and Philip.
Yeah.
Now, if you notice the other side of the coin, what do we see here? Right there, where I'm pointing the cursor. There's a sun symbol, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah.
This is not a star. This is the sun. And what is she holding in her hand? This is called a patera. A patera is a dish in which you place your libation to pour as an offering to the god. So she's showing that she's a worshiper of the sun god. This is the official religion of the empire.
Yes, very interesting.
Right here. And that's the same star that the Umayyads use.
Any idea what that creature is to the left of the figure?
Well, it looks like a peacock to me, but it could be something else. I'd have to look into that a little bit more.
Yeah, just if you knew.
But you can see the word Regina here. Regina.
Yes, queen,
is the queen.
Yeah, interesting.
Now, interesting, this word Zenobia shows up in the life of Muhammad, and why? And I think it's another case of cultural appropriation. Muhammad married a woman called Zainab, very similar to Zenobia.
Mm-hmm.
Zainab's marriage is the only one mentioned in the Quran. Zainab was also the first daughter of Muhammad by his first wife, Khadijah. The reason Muhammad had to marry Zainab, apart from the royal connection, is that it kept him from having any offspring. Whoever wrote the Sirah and the other hadith literature did not want Muhammad to have offspring. because that would lead to a dynasty. And
Also, yeah.
And the Abbasids and the Umayyads did not want Muhammad to have his own dynasty.
So even if it was a mythology they're writing, they still wanted the possibility to be ruled out.
Every possibility can't be ruled out until you actually rule it out by evidence.
Yeah.
So the name Zenobia is culturally appropriated in the biographical literature to suggest that the imperial mantle of the Palmyrene Empire and the Roman Empire have fallen on Muhammad.
Yeah.
And his sun cult.
Yeah, and again, just to re-emphasize the point, if you could just show that map again a second. It just kind of reinforces the idea that we're talking about a northern narrative originally, before it was moved down south, you know?
Mm-hmm. Now, what does that map look like? That looks like the map of the Arab Empire created by Muawiyah and Abdul Malik.
Yeah.
But this is 400 or 500 years before them.
Yeah.
They were just, and I'm sure in their minds, they were just saying, well, we're going to get back what we lost.
Yeah, yeah.
The Romans. We're going to get back what we lost.
Yeah, it's not, they didn't view it as expanding into territories they had no right to. They viewed this as, well, we owned this once and we're going to own it again.
It's ours. We're just taking it back.
Yeah.
The Romans stole it from us.
Yeah.
That was their point of view.
Yeah.
So here we see the temple of Baal Shaman in Palmyra, and I think a lot of what I'm bringing out at this point was known and still is known to people of the region.
Yeah.
But because they're all Muslims, they don't want to say anything about it. And I believe Mr. Khalid al-Assad knew what I'm saying, and he probably knew much more about it than I do.
Could you make clear to the audience who this person is? Because I know you've told me off air, but just to point out the connection.
Khalid al-Assad was murdered by ISIS at the age of 82 after he refused to reveal the location of hidden antiquities relating to Palmyra. Now, Palmyra was the center of Zenobia's empire. And he knew just about everything about Palmyra because he was born there, he was raised there, and he studied it his entire life. It was his life's work. He was made the chief curator of all of the artifacts in Palmyra. Yeah. And he gave his life to defend them against ISIS. And I think Caliph Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi of ISIS, I think he knew a lot of what I'm saying as well, and that's why he had to destroy it. Yeah. He realized the connection between Allah and the sun god of Syria. Yeah. I believe they did. Now look at this. Symbolism. Let's start at the top left. Yeah. The symbolism of the sun, and once again, for people who are just tuning in, it's not a star, like a star in the night sky. This is the sun symbol. We see it on the coin of Elagabalus. We see it on the coin of Zenobia. And what do we see over here? As soon as Abdul Malik takes the cross off of his coins, what does he put there?
You can see the sun there to the left. The
sun. Now, we're not sure what this globe is here.
Yeah.
This could be the sun. This could be the light of the sun. We're not exactly sure what it means, but he's placing this as his object of worship.
Yeah.
But the sun is curiously present in all of these others in the similar manner.
It looks like he's following the motif from earlier times.
It looks like this is a symbol of his religion, the sun. And the Umayyads, as we know, crossed northern Africa, and then they got into Spain, and they established themselves in Spain. And they made some coins, and what do we see here?
Sun.
We see the sun symbol in Spain. It's not the sun. It's not Islam. It's the sun.
That's amazing. I've never seen this coin before. This is a massive discovery here.
I think we have to connect the dots.
Yeah.
We go from here to Zenobia, to Abdul Malik, to Islamic Spain, and we see the same sun symbol.
Yeah.
Shams, the solar deity. The chronology of the sun cult, this refers to the ping pong, which occurred between the Roman Empire and the Arabs of Shams.
Okay.
They repeatedly tried to reestablish their sun cult in the Roman Empire, where they believed it belonged. It belonged. So they took at first in 218, Elagabalus took the sun cult right to Rome, to the center of the empire, and established it there. A few years later, he was assassinated. The sun cult was disestablished, but a similar cult, the cult of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, was reestablished in 274, 50 years later, by the Emperor Aurelian.
Yeah.
And it was made another cult in Rome, parallel to the others.
Yeah.
In 380 AD, by the Edict of Thessalonica, the sun cult lost to Christianity because of the Romans established Christianity as their state religion. Other religions fell from favor. In another 300 or 200 years, Muhammad
300.
was born. Or I'm sorry.
Wait, oh, sorry, am I wrong? No, sorry.
200.
200, you're right for some time.
Muhammad was born. And then the sun cult started to return. The sun cult gradually was restored during this time, and finally we see in 715 the Umayyad coins throughout the empire bear the sun symbol.
Okay, so if you just go back to the previous slide, we'll wrap up that part. And
this is what I call the ping pong of the sun cult versus Christianity. The Arabs didn't like Christianity being imposed on them. They wanted to get their sun cult back, and it was Muhammad who brought it back.
Okay, so thank you, Sam. That was a great presentation. The connection with this sun cult in both the case of Elagabalus and Muhammad is very strong there, and you've shown us lots of parallels. And the next time you come back, you're going to be talking to us about other parallels, and we really look forward to hearing what you have to tell us. So thank you, Sam, and we'll see you very soon.
Okay, bye, Mel.
Okay, so we can see here he's saying that the sun god cult worship lost to Christianity. The Romans took on Christianity, which is a falsehood, because we know that Constantine the Great establish the sun god worship under the guise of Christianity. And we have the worship of Jesus' birthday now on December 25th as this sun god cult. We can see through this sun god cult of Elagabalus, who is related to the Herods, that this is the early establishment of the Roman Catholic Church. So not only has the dragon cult started the Islamic religion with their false prophet Muhammad, the beast of the earth, they've also started the false Christian religion of Roman Catholicism as the beast of the sea. I think it's clear, and there's a lot more information involved here, and people that I believe are related to the temple priesthood, but all of them are related to this dragon religion and empire and cult that comes from Babylon, which is related to these Exilarchs. So the Exilarchs were the exiled house of David to Babylon, along with the Levites, the southern kingdom of Judah, and they established themselves in Babylon as merchants and bankers. Then they moved into the Persian Empire. We see in the book of Daniel, he prays that the angel of the Lord battles with the prince of Persia or the king of Persia to allow the tribe of Judah to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. We see a big portion of the tribe going back to Judea, and there we have the lineage of David, and Jesus is born. But there were many children of King David, and he's had several wives, not just Bathsheba. I believe he had a couple of other wives and many children, and a lot of those children were corrupt. They were, for example, Absalom. There was also his son Amnon, who raped his half-sister Tamar. And there was a lot of infighting for the throne of David after his death. And we know all the stories in the Bible of the corrupt kings of David. So just because these people are related to the house of David, it does not mean that they are righteous. So this house of David, via the Babylonian exiles, became the Exilarchs of southern France, Spain. They, I believe, established the Knights Templar through the aristocratic families, as the daughter of Charles Martel married into these families, and they became the royal houses of Europe and the black nobility of Venice, the merchants and the bankers. We can see this relation between the dragon and the Knights Templar in the dragon of the City of London, which has the cross of St. George on its shield, which was the cross that the Knights Templars used. They were the first real bankers of Europe and the Crusades. The story goes that the Templars went to the Holy Land to learn the secrets of the Kabbalah, but as early as the 700s, the Maquis of Narbonne in France, the Jewish princedom that was given to them by King Pepin, had already established a Talmudic school. So these families were already learning Kabbalistic and Talmudic principles, and it's my belief that the entire Crusades, which were funded by the Pierre Leone family or the Peter Lyon family, Lyon being for the line of Judah and the house of David, wanted to re-establish themselves in Jerusalem. The reason being they wanted back their main hub on their trading routes. These people were merchants and traders on the Silk and Spice Road. Jerusalem was the center of the earth, and that meant the center of world economics and trade, and they wanted that city back. They gained it back for a short time in the Crusades under the Kingdom of Jerusalem, where all of these French aristocratic lords and nobles ruled. They were the descendants of the Exilarchs in southern France. And we today have the royal houses of Europe all using the standing line as their heraldry and declare that they are related to the house of David. And this is how they come in, via the Exilarchs of Babylon. Anyway, thanks for listening today, everyone. See you in the next talk.